doing the right thing at the wrong time. And that's what causes people to fail. The most competitive world we could possibly be in, we think. The reality is storms are coming. If you're out there and you're paying attention, you know this world economy is in an interesting place. Companies since 2008 have been brilliant. The ones that have succeeded, they've done the smart thing. They figured out how to cut, they figured out how to become more efficient. And we've seen some of these companies now have larger, cash balances than they've ever had. They've made the companies more profitable than any time in history. But some of those companies now are starting to struggle, and they're struggling with how do we increase that top line, which almost everybody here, whether you're a sales leader or you're a sales professional, you're looking to figure out, what do I do to increase those sales? How do I move that top line? And it's not quite as simple in the world we're in today. And the competitiveness is going to increase. Let's face it. Right now, the Fed has done a $1 trillion party this year. $1 trillion. That's $85 billion a month that they flooded into the economy. And it doesn't just come to the US, it goes around the world. It goes to China. I tell you this because, not to scare you, but you and I, if we're going to be honest, we got to see things as they are, and it's going to get much more competitive out there. So now, just a little bit of a difference. You don't have to re-engineer your entire sales process. You need that little tiny edge. You go to the Olympics, I work with a lot of Olympic athletes, and we'll work for 6 months on how to make a difference of 0.2 of a second. A guy can win the gold medal by 1/100th of a second. What do we give the second person? The silver, the third person, bronze. The fourth person, who's a second later, 2 millimeters behind, we give nothing, and the fourth fastest human being on earth. So my view is this, look, if we're gonna be effective, there's two things. There's the things that are gonna create breakthroughs that are exciting, and then there's those little disciplines that we all know, but we don't do enough of. I can't tell you how often I see people who are good people, good salespeople, good sales managers, sales leaders, regional leaders, and they're doing the right thing at the wrong time. And that's what causes people to fail. They do the right thing at the wrong time. You buy a house in 2006, buying a home was great, you bought it at the wrong time. So sequence. The dog bit Johnny, Johnny bit the dog. Same content, different sequence, different experience of your Johnny. So my passion is saying, look, don't fall into the trap of thinking that you know everything in this industry, you've been around forever, because then you lose your edge. Hunger is what gives you that edge. And knowledge is not power, it's potential power. I've seen so many people who make the mistake to think that knowledge is the same as mastery. We all know that isn't true. Execution will trump knowledge any day. So one of the things that Walter and I have done is go around to companies and see companies that are having this explosive growth. And as you said, Mark Benioff's a dear friend of mine. I've been with him since the very first days. He went to one of my seminars, he left Oracle, started Salesforce with the idea of building a $100 million company, which this year you guys are gonna do about $4 billion. So I've watched that journey. The companies that have grown, who can grow that top line as well, they've figured out a set of strategies on how to just execute. And Walter's gonna talk a little more detail about it, but it's really fundamental. It's not rocket science. It's just these little tweaks. I went and took up golf, I'll never forget. And you can tell by the way I speak, it's probably not the game for me. But two of my sons started playing golf. And I swore I'd never play golf because I don't need another reason to use an F word, and I also don't want to dress like that. But golf places are the prettiest places in the world, golf clubs are, and I want to be with my boys, so I took up golf. So my first day out, boom, I hit this thing. Probably within the first 30 minutes, I outdrove my instructor who'd been playing the game for 20 years. So of course, I'm a guy, so I bust his balls and I tell every person he knows I drove the ball further than he did on my first day playing the game, not realizing that paybacks are a bitch. So the next day he takes me out, and I'm great on a driving range. I'm on a real golf course. He starts me out at a golf course where it's a very, very tight green to start with. And just before he starts, he gets me all revved up. Can you hit it further than you have before? And most of you play golf know, hitting it harder is not better. And so I hit the ball like a mile, but I hit the ball 200 yards to the left. And I'm so frustrated because the day before I was relatively straight. And so now I try to crack, I'm going 250 yards to the right. And I'm like, give me another one, give me another one. People are waiting behind us, they're getting upset, they want to lead people through. But I tell you the story because in the end, he finally says, ain't it a bitch? Welcome to golf. I said, it's not golf, it's me. I said, this is insane, I'm 200 yards off. And he said something I never forgot. He said, Tony, actually you're 2 millimeters off. He said, you're overcorrecting. That's what most people do in their business, they overcorrect. Don't get me wrong, there are times to revolutionize, and there's times to figure out that if you're gonna hit that golf ball, if you hit it dead solid straight, you're straight, but if you're just 2 millimeters off, just 2 millimeters this direction, you're 200 yards off here. 200 meters off here, you're gonna be in the water or the sand. And so we've been focused on what are those little 2 millimeter execution points that if you'll do them, you'll change the whole game. That's what this is really all about. And I say that to you because when you start feeling like, oh my God, I'm so far off, I can never make that sale. When I tell people victory is near, it's just a strategy away. It's just a tune-up away. It's just a measurement away. And that may sound like positive thinking, but we've done it again and again. We were just with Mike Clayville from over at VMware. He was sharing with Walter and I how he took the strategies we put here. It sounds so simple, so basic, but he implemented them and he went from 500 million to 2 billion in sales in 8 consecutive quarters of growth using exactly what we're going to show you here. But the only way you really get results is you figure out what the real gap is between where you are and where you want to be, and then you get deadly serious and you call it tight so you can figure a strategy on how to close that gap and how to make the reality happen. But the numbers in some of the most successful companies in the world are pretty crazy. Well, most of us in life, we don't want to hear the bad news. But if you've been in business long enough, if someone says to you, I got good news and bad news, which one do you want to know? I always say, tell me the bad news. The good news will take care of itself. Tell me the bad news so we can rip it open. Putting that aside is why people go through that experience that all sales leaders love so much of missing, your numbers. I mean, you and I both know that's not something everybody wants to go through. And it happens because of these little disciplines that, by the way, before we were in the virtual world, people used to be in proximity. We saw everybody every Monday morning, and you were able to have these one-on-one conversations, to look somebody in the eye and do the training and test people. Then everybody 20 years ago got shipped off and virtualized. Wonderful idea, but email wasn't doing it. The technology didn't match. Now we have the technology. I mean, Salesforce is delivering it, Work.com, all these killer tools, but we've lost some of the fundamental disciplines that are so basic that we've forgotten to apply them. And listen, if you look at somebody like I got to interview, some of the greatest coaches in history. You think about UCLA, and you see a team that won 11 consecutive national 88 games and 11 out of 12 NCAA championships. I mean, that wasn't luck. They had a coach, he was extraordinary, and his mindset was, I don't care if you can make a shot over your back arm from 20 feet away. Come over here and make these free throws, and I want you to come over and make these bank shots from 5 feet away. I want to see 100 in a row. What we're about is, let's figure out how do we get you to do the little things that are going to take all the stress out of your life, the little things that allow you to really know what's necessary and produce the results right now. That's what these 9 disciplines are really about. I think it starts really by thinking about every person as an individual. The great part of these one-on-ones is they can make up for a lot of meetings that you're wasting time in because you have somebody right in front of you, and everyone's style and approach is different. So I always say, to influence somebody, you have to know what already influences them. Most of us are really good at influencing people who are like us, but if you've got a large sales staff and over a large region of the country or the world, you have to be able to enter each of their worlds. And you have to understand who you're dealing with. And the purpose of this really one-on-one master sales meeting is to not just figure out where are they really in their pipeline, their forecast, the individual deals. It's also what are their goals? What are they trying to achieve? If you can help them achieve what they want, you know darn well you're going to be able to achieve what the organization wants. But too often that coaching process is missing for people. And I think that if you want to help somebody create a breakthrough, let's assume you've got somebody that's having a challenge or doing well, you want to take them to another level. I can tell you, look for 3 areas just really fast. And I don't care, a breakthrough, just so you know, I define a breakthrough as a moment in time where the impossible suddenly becomes possible. Where you go from talking about stuff to doing it. Where you go from, I'd really like to do this to where it just becomes the habit and you follow through. And what changes people's results, that moment, can come from a lot of places. It can come from being pissed off. It can come from being frustrated. It can come from being inspired. It can come because someone shared a new insight with you. But I found 3 things in particular that we might want to throw up on the screen. I'll give them in reverse order. You want to change your results as a leader and get a breakthrough with your team. You want to get a breakthrough with somebody one-on-one individually. One thing that can do it is simply a new strategy. So often we keep doing what doesn't work. But strategies, as you know, are often a breakthrough. Do the right thing in the right way. I remember I did a talk here for all of Salesforce's salespeople, about 3,000 people a few years here. And there was a lot of discussion about technique and a lot of discussion about the advantages of Salesforce. And they were all brilliant discussions. But when I got up, I said, I'd really like to challenge something. I'd like to challenge the presupposition that you all seem to have that these are the things that are going to make somebody buy. Because I've spent my time with 50 million people from 100 countries. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, everybody has different goals and desires, but we have certain needs. They're the same for everybody. They're the same 6 needs. We need certainty. All of your people that you're working with, they want to have certainty this is going to be worth it. Where's the ROI in this? How am I going to know that there's going to be real value in here? We also need uncertainty. If we're bored silly, if we don't have enough variety, we need to feel significant. We need to feel that we're special, unique, important in some way to ourselves and other people. We need to feel a sense of connection to someone or to a people or to a team or love. We need to grow, we need to contribute. Real quick, those are 6 needs I can tell you everybody has. But not everybody's equal. If you're working with a salesperson, you want to inspire them and motivate them, you think selling them on the next thing economically for them is going to do it, very often they are coin operated, but not always. And even those that are, there's another level. If you're trying to close a deal, you've got to know what's going to influence this person. So I had Mark and 3,000 of his people. I taught them these 6 needs. I taught them to identify them. And I said, I want you to write down an example where you closed an incredible deal. And how many of these needs did you meet? And how much was that person driven? Because of the 6 needs, some people are more certainty driven. That's the most important thing in their life. Some people are more significance. What am I getting out of this? How are you treating me? You don't treat me well, it doesn't matter how much money you save me. Some people are more, they're going to buy based on relationship. No one is the same. And none of the salespeople you manage are the clients that you go to. So I did an analysis. I said, you do the analysis, 2 deals. A deal you lost, and then I want you to describe which of these 6 needs did you fail to meet or did you successfully meet? And a deal that was a breakthrough that you won. What came out of it is Mark and the top salesperson, all Salesforce, who got it that day, and the largest check in the history of the company for any salesperson, I've forgotten the size, was sizable. He shared that they had worked on a project together where they had failed, and where they failed is they assumed, I know what this person wants. We're going to show them that our product has the most endorsements and it's going to be the best economically for them, which makes common sense. But I had a conversation with the President of the United States not long ago, and I was describing him. I said, your plan is common sense. Everything makes sense, but I said cognitively, but humans don't operate that way. You can't tell people you're wrong, and then expect they're going to suddenly support you. I don't care who you are, President of the United States. And so in the case where they had failed, they had met the guy's needs for certainty about the value of the product, but they didn't make this guy feel significant enough to say yes. He felt like he was just one of many. And he went with somebody else with an inferior product that simply they had a better strategy. They knew how to meet his needs better. So that's number 1 real fast. Number 2, if you got a great strategy, let's say you want to lose weight, you want to do anything, lots of strategies help you lose weight. People don't usually use their strategy. If your salesperson is not breaking through, if you're not breaking through, you probably have a limited story. Think about it. How difficult is it to be fit and strong? Content's everywhere. It's cheap. You can download it. Someone can show up at your house. We're not fat in this country. We're not, a third of this country is obese. Not because it's so hard to understand the strategy. It's because what keeps us from using our strategy is a story. If your salesperson's not succeeding, you got to listen for that story. The story might be, everybody's tightening right now. The story is the competition's got a better product. The story is there's too much politics going on. Everybody's got a story, and those stories keep us from making progress. So we have a set of tools to show you how to break people out of their story in a way that's very respectful and where you can do it for yourself. It's an ability to get rid of the stuff that's keeping you from making progress. Somebody says, I can't lose weight. Why? Here's their story. I've tried everything. Or, something like, I'm big boned. No, you're freaking fat. The truth will set you free. But as long as you have a story, I don't have the time, whatever the story is, you are handcuffed. You cannot use the strategies. And finally, if you try to change someone's story without changing their state, the state we're in, the mental, emotional state, that place of, for example, when you're really angry at somebody, have you ever been really pissed off with someone? And then suddenly you can remember everything they've ever done that pissed you off. Or you're totally in love. You're head over heels in love. You're in lust. You can't stop thinking about this person. What's wrong with your life when you're totally in love? Nothing. Because our state affects our story. Our story of what life's about, how the business is, where we're going. And our story controls what we do and how much of our strategy we'll use or come up with. I think you want to measure more than just the results. You want to see what happens to the pipeline. You want to see each stage of it. You can only manage what you measure. If you don't measure it enough, it's not there. When I take over a company, the way I grow companies is I start measuring massively. I find out the major key elements, and we measure more often. If you measure once a month, you're gonna have bad months. Once a week, you're gonna have bad weeks. Once a day, your worst you're gonna have is a bad day. There's some things we'll measure hourly in the beginning until we get that momentum. Measure more, capture it, and you'll be able to intervene sooner and get a better result. We saw about a third growth in our sales Mark's been a friend for some time, and we still were using Salesforce for a while. And we finally brought Salesforce on, and it was fantastic. But what I found was maximization didn't happen until we started addressing the people side. It's like once you have the system, that's phenomenal, but now you need a process for maximizing that system, and you need the people to have that psychology shifted. And so I did some work on that, but that's part of how Walter and I became partners, because we've been doing business together for about 15 years. But I finally sat down with him and I said, we really need to take this and maximize it, because it's horrible to have 30% growth when you have 130% growth. And so that became our focus. And then when Work.com came on, I find that to be invaluable for peer-to-peer type of communication. Instead of everybody trying to acknowledge from the top down, when it's done laterally, when it's even done from the bottom up, it's extraordinary. And not only the acknowledgement that comes from people sharing stories about what's going on, or being able to communicate or share projects in an intelligent way, but also, we have prizes and we have economics where we allow a certain amount of people's bonuses to be given by anyone in the company. So you can decide, you have so much money each quarter, you can distribute that. You can distribute it and it's converted into Apple products, or it's converted into Amazon products for someone. They can purchase whatever they want. And we just found it to be a fun part of our culture now, where people are acknowledging people in a different way, where people are being more conscious about holding people to a different standard. And it isn't just happening from the top down, but it's happening side to side, peer to peer, and from the bottom up as well. So we find these tools to be incredible. But one of the reasons that Walter and I decided to write this book was because Walter was practicing some of this, we were practicing some of this, and we said, let's codify this into 9 disciplines. And now, we've been taking companies like Dell, we've increased one division, one group of theirs by over 600%. In fact, they thought the number was so ridiculous that Walter can share with you. They did a focus group with us, and they said, okay, we're gonna do a non-group of cloud coaching people, and we're gonna do a group of cloud coaching. And the results were pretty extraordinary. When a person is brand new, they're an enthusiastic beginner, you do need to micromanage them, because you have to teach them everything. At the very beginning, your style has to be very directive. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go here, make a left here, make a right there, open the cupboard, bring this thing back to me. That's not micromanaging when someone's in the first stage of development. Then after a while, people go to a second stage of psychological development, which my friend Ken Blanchard used to call the disillusioned learner. And that's where, you still need to direct people, but they don't want to be directed, right? So you do, because they don't quite have it yet. They know enough, but not enough to actually have the habits to make them successful. So now you have to not just be highly directive, but as Ken would say, you got to be highly supportive. You got to say, listen, I know it's a tough situation for you right now. I don't want to be micromanaging you. That's not my intent, but I want to make you succeed. And there's a couple of things that still you may know intellectually, but they're not in your body yet. And I'd like to give you this feedback, okay? And you enroll them. There's a third stage where the person, they know what to do, but Ken and I talked about, he called it a reluctant contributor. They know what to do, and they know how to do it, they got the skill, they got the ability, but they're lacking the confidence because they're kind of new at it, right? It's kind of like, did you see Karate Kid? There's a stage in this movie where, the master comes and teaches the kid, just wash the car, and the kid takes it for a long time. And one day he's a disillusioned learner. He comes to him and he says, what am I doing? I'm wasting my time. I'm washing your car. I'm washing your floors. And Miyagi tries to throw a strike at him and goes, huh? And the guy washes his hand away and he does this move. Well, there's a later stage in the movie where the kid is skilled. He's like the salespeople you're dealing with. He's really skilled. He doesn't need micromanagement. If you micromanage him, it's going to piss him off, but he still needs support. That third stage person just needs your emotional support, your psychological support, saying, listen, I know you can do this. Let me help you with this just a little bit. And you're not going so much in the details now. Now you're really doing the psychology side. And then finally, there's a fourth level, which is the super achiever, the person that's integrated, the person who's competent, is effective. That person needs very little direction. You give them too much, you're going to be micromanaging. And they need very little support. They're like, don't give me, I kick ass on my own. I don't need you to do that. Just give me what I need. So what's micromanaging and what's coaching depends on the stage of development of the person that you're working with. Even those people that are competent in certain areas, right? And they don't want that coaching in that area, but there's weaknesses. Because you're really a brilliant person doesn't mean you're brilliant at this particular skill set. Or because you've been a rainmaker in one area doesn't mean you're a rainmaker in another. And so one of the things to do though is, you've got to make sure that here's the psychology. If you're a sales leader, you got to be a practical psychologist. You got to be able to be in a position where you get someone to want your coaching. To do that, you got to make sure they feel like they're growing towards something. And when they get there, they're going to need less of you. Less of you does not mean you don't coach them. That's what Barry is saying. You're still coaching them, but it's done in a way where they feel like, oh, I want that. You helped me to get here. Oh, I wouldn't mind getting to the next level. But they have to have an ownership of what they do master if you're going to really be effective with people. And that's why what we've been talking about here, these 9 disciplines, they go every month or every 90 days, depending upon which company and how you structure what you do, but you never miss. It becomes a system. And so people no longer feel like, what are you doing coaching me? It's just our normal meeting. This is how it works.
The way we do
so you
business
don't have people being offended in any way. And also you don't miss because it's part of your system every single time. And that consistency is where the execution comes from. And execution, as I said earlier, always triumphs over knowledge. You got to remember that you get what you tolerate. We get what we tolerate in ourselves and the people around us. And as you were just saying earlier there, Barry, people test you all the time. If you develop a relationship that's respectful and where you really are truly trying to help this person who's virtual to achieve their goals, and you know something about them, you're not just calling every time, what are your numbers? But sometimes you surprise them, you check in on them, or you find something they've done well and you sincerely reach out to compliment them, even though you're busy as hell. Even though these people supposedly don't need this, everybody appreciates when they're not just a piece of a cog in a machine. When people feel like you really give a shit, when people feel like you're reaching out and doing more for them than what you're just asking from them, they're going to show up at a different level for you. So it's about reciprocation. It's about saying, what can I do to anticipate? What can I do to help? What can I do to reach out? All it takes is a few little moments where you step in and acknowledge or offer something where you're not making a demand, you're not making an expectation, even though you have the right to, since you're the sales manager. That deepens a relationship. And now when it's time to cash an emotional check of demand, your relationship is not going to bounce, if you will, metaphorically. I also think the other thing is that's why things like our pepper product is so valuable, where every single day, sometime during the day, there is a measurement of their current competencies. Because if you don't do that, you're going to be measuring sales, you're going to be measuring pipeline, but you have no idea what these people are actually saying, how they're dealing with things. And to test that regularly, just to keep, just like the athlete who gets up there and practices and takes batting practice every day and doesn't practice on the game, you don't want them practicing on your clients. So another thing I would definitely say is something you want to consider for your organization. And sometimes the word strokes has a negative connotation for some people, other people really positive, but what we all want is to know that we matter. We all want to know that we mean something to someone. And I think some people in that group are going to be more committed to certainty. If you can increase their sense of certainty that they're going to achieve what they want, they're going to be more effective. Some of those people need variety. If you're calling them all the time with the same crap, they're just bored silly with you. And you're not going to get much support or respect beyond what they have to. If that person needs significance, which most people enter this profession want to be significant, then you got to give them sincere significance, not bullshit, not blowing smoke, not pumping them up. What can you really acknowledge them for sincerely, where they see and feel like they're unique and they're appreciated? Some people, it's all about personal relationship. It's that personal connection. You know those things about what's going on in their life. Some people, man, it's about growing. If you can help me grow, you're king in my life. Some people, it's like they want to sense that what they're doing is meaningful, they're contributing. Finding out people's hot buttons and meeting those buttons becomes even more important when somebody is virtual than when they're around you, because when you're around you, there's more proximity. And with proximity, you pick those things up. When you're not in proximity and you're using tools of efficiency like the phone or texting or email, boy, all the more reason you really got to hone in and know what the needs are of that individual. Yeah, here's what I'd say, and I'm coming from a different place than a lot of people do, because I chose to work for myself, and all the companies I've been part of, I have partners in many of them, but I believe that the truth serves. And I believe that instead of saying we live in a culture where no one will listen to the truth, they won't look at those gaps, I'd say it's on to you personally to break through. I mean, you get what you tolerate, as I said earlier. And I think it's really critical to say you are the creator of culture. Instead of saying I live in a culture, if you're a leader, you're the creator of the culture. And you get that culture by what you tolerate. So I'd come to them and say, listen, I understand it may be inconvenient right now. I understand there's a lot of stresses right now, but this has got to be dealt with. And if you bring your voice to the table consistently, it will get dealt with. If you can't get anybody to do that after all that, my guess is you're going to be one of the 70% that leaves because you're not aligned with your manager, and you're going to find another opportunity with somebody who is more driven based on the truth and where you are. My hope is that you get through to them. But most people you can get through if you're truly committed. Why we don't get through is we're trying to kind of share something Boy, we're trying to be safe. I'd say strap on whatever guts you got inside yourself, step up and tell the truth, and the best will come of that one way or another. And if this organization can't handle it, I can promise you, there's an organization out there that's, if you're hungry enough to see things aren't working, to speak up and to do something about it, there's a place for you somewhere else. There's a culture for you you'll be more aligned with. Don't think of yourself as a manager. A manager is someone who'll get results as long as they're right there engaged with people. A leader can lift somebody's own standards to the point that when you're not around, they continue those standards. And in the world of virtualization, see yourself as a sales leader, not a manager. That'd be the first place. And then if you are a leader, go first. Anything I want somebody else to do, I do it first. I do it at a harder level than I didn't expect anybody else. If you ever went to an event that I do, I just got back from London. We have 6,000 people there from 19 different countries, translated 9 languages simultaneously. The seminar is 50 hours, 50, in 4 days. Now, most people won't sit for a 3-hour movie that someone is, spent $300 million to make. So how do you engage people? I go there first. I go to a level of intensity and a level of commitment and a level of caring and an energy level that I can now take somebody else to because I've done it. I remember a gentleman who's now a dear friend of mine, actually a dear friend and an associate of mine, partner in another business. He came to an event one time and he's, sitting back with his arms crossed. He said, "I saw you up there, Tony," and he said, "It was amazing. The air conditioning went out in this building and it was hot and I was wearing a suit and tie." And he said, "You were giving everything." And I was sitting there thinking, why do I got to do this? And the sweat was going down my tie, I guess. I got about halfway and he said, "If that guy can do this, I can get up and rock and roll and make this thing happen." And he turned the corner. Leaders go first. Do some things for them. Don't just ask them. Go figure out everything you can about their needs, their desires, and their goals, and try to think of what are some of the ways that you can start to demonstrate with real action that you're in the game with their best interests in mind, not just you're in the game to be a voice of the company, and you'll build a different level of relationship from day one. Can't lead somebody. You can't, touch somebody if you're not touched. You can't move people if you're not moved. And you can't lead somebody, coach somebody if you're not really being coached and taking it in yourself. Destroy the fear with real results, with a real strategy, make it a playbook, and get people so they can really win. You don't earn your way to a fortune. The way you have a fortune long-term is you make money your slave. You and I have done it through multiple businesses, yes. Right? But the other way to do it is through the investing. And I always tell people, no matter how great your business is, you should have a money machine on the right side of you with no employees, with no moving parts. It takes 15 minutes a year once you know what to do. That's what this is. But let's talk about the market for a second. People wait to try to time the market.
Yes.
So watch this. And first of all, you get a correction every year. People are overreacting, and I tell people the market never took a dime from anybody. Only you did that because you got fearful.
Yep.
So last year, since 1900, 116 years, we've had an average of one correction a year. Correction, by the way, for people who don't know, it is when it goes from a market high, you drop by 10% up to 19 and 99%, because at 20% or more, it becomes a bear market or a crash, okay? So we get one of these every year. So last year in January, worst January in the history of the market.
I remember.
$2.2 trillion meltdown.
Yep.
People are freaking out. Market drops 900 points in a day. All the wealthiest people in the world are at Davos. They go interviewed Ray Dalio, the number one hedge fund guy in the history of the world.
And?
A large hedge fund's 15 billion, he's 165 billion. You need a $5 billion net worth and 100 million to talk to him.
Yep.
I got him to share with me. They put him on TV. They say, "What do we do? Is the end coming?" He goes, "It's a correction." He said, "Go read Tony Robbins' book. I explained a theory of how I made 85%.
Did you sell some copies there?
I got him to give me the answer.
Yeah.
He's made money 85% of the time in 75 years. But here's what you need to know. 80% of those corrections never become a bear market. They all correct back, just like last year. But if you sold, you lose. What matters is the system you put in place. The shit you do randomly every now and then because you got money is not going to help you much, right?
Especially if it's a fucking fat whip or a watch.
Yes.
I don't even want to start.
So the number one most important financial decision for everyone watching, everyone in this room, really, we all know, you got to become an owner instead of somebody that is constantly, utilizing products. In other words, if you have an iPhone and you don't own Apple, what's wrong? You're a consumer, you're not an owner. You got to become an owner. How do you do it? Every person in this room has got, regardless of whether you think you have the money or not, to make the most important financial decision, which says to be an owner, I have to take a percentage of my income and no matter what, off the top, automate it so I don't see it, put that in an investment account. Now, what's the number? You might say, I can't, Tony, I'm starting my business, I'm strapped. I tell all business owners the example of a gentleman, true story, Theodore Johnson, 1950s, works for UPS, guy never makes more than $14,000 in a year. He retires with $71 million. He gives away $35 million while he's still alive.
So good.
How is that possible? A friend of his did what we're teaching, comes to him and says, I'm gonna make you rich. He goes, I'm not rich, I make 14 grand a year, right? He says, I'll make you rich, I'm gonna put a 20% tax on you. He goes, what are you talking about? I can't pay my bills as it is. He said, listen to me.
Adjust.
If the government gave you an additional 20% tax, you'd bitch, you'd yell, you'd scream, and you'd pay it, because you have to and your brain adjusts. But that money goes in this investment account. The compounding of that account made him $70 million. And this is something Ray Dalio taught me, one of the smartest men on the face of the earth. He said, Tony, I don't care what it is you know. You're gonna invest in what you know because you have certainty. Well, 19 years old, dad convinces him to save $300 a month, $4,000 a year. So it's within the range of anybody here you're talking about, right? Guy starts at 19, stops doing it at 28. He only puts in 35 grand. He puts it in the market. And the market's grown 10% over 30 years, but let's use 8% to be more conservative. Last 20 years has been more 8%. At 8%, that'll grow to $941,000 without another dime. He'll have $1 million off of $50,000.
You're preaching.
But on the other hand, his best friend waits till he's 29. He does the same thing, but he has to keep investing to 65. He puts in almost 180 grand. He doesn't get the $1 million. The two things that mess everybody up are anger and fear. When you let them dominate you, you're in trouble. And you can't be angry and grateful simultaneously. It's the antidote. It's the only antidote that really works. And you can't be fearful and grateful simultaneously. So for me, to answer his question, I don't hope I'm going to be grateful. I have a system like anything in life. If you're a great pilot, you know how to fly a jet, you still have a checklist. Because if you miss the checklist, the consequences are too big. So I'm not a big meditator. My meditations have been active, it's been physical, it's been in nature, it's been ripping things open, it's being on stage. But I started a few years ago doing what I call priming. And what priming is most people think their thoughts are their thoughts, when really your thoughts have been primed by the environment. That's why you want to create the environments like you create and I create, because it makes you be your best. But specifically, there was a study where they took a group of actors, they had them go out to 200 people, and the only thing different, they walked up to each person, and the only thing different was they held a cup of coffee. They'd walk up to you as a stranger and go, would you hold this for a second? They'd look down so you can't say yes or no, and you'd end up taking it. They get their phone, they adjust it, they take it back and say thank you. That's the whole thing. Same facial expression for every person. Only difference, half got an iced coffee, the other got hot coffee. Now, 30 minutes go by. They send out an assistant, a research assistant with a clipboard, and they come up to these same individuals and say, if you give us 2 minutes of your time, we'll give you $20. Will you just read these 3 paragraphs and tell us what you think of this character? There's a couple questions. They read the 3 paragraphs and they say, what do you think of the main character in this little story? 81% that were given iced coffee say the person is cold and uncaring. 80%, a 1% variance of those who are hot coffee say the person is warm and connected and caring, with nothing else but coffee 30 minutes earlier, ice cold. I could tell you 50 of these. So what I do is I get up every morning and I make a radical change in my state, and I have a simple deal with myself. I prime for 10 minutes every day. Because if you don't have 10 minutes, you don't have a life. There's
100%.
no excuse. So I come in, I do this radical breathing change, these 3 sets of 30 breaths where I bring the air in and explode it out my nose, because I'm sure you know from Eastern philosophy, the breath is like the string on a kite. The mind is the kite.
Yep.
You can change the mind through breath.
Yep.
So I do this radical breathing, takes a minute. Then I do 3 things for 3 minutes, really simple. I take 3 minutes and I focus on 3 specific individual things that I'm grateful for, but I don't think about them intellectually. I step into the moment, remember it, feel it, and so what it does is it activates it not as a thought, but as a biochemistry. Then I do 3 minutes of prayer and blessings, starting with my family and moving out to everybody, my clients, friends, people I meet. And then I do 3 minutes on what I call 3 to Thrive, where I focus on 3 important outcomes that I have, that I want to accomplish, but I don't think about want to accomplish it. I see it, I feel it, the experience is done, I feel grateful.
That's your move.
I actually go 15 or 20 minutes right after because it feels so good, but what's happened is now you're primed. You're not hoping you're in prime time, you are in prime time. And to me, that's how I do it. And once you prime yourself, you start noticing things to be grateful for all the time. And when I asked Sir John Templeton, the first billionaire investor, international investor in the whole world, started with nothing, built to that. When I asked him, I said, what's the secret to wealth? I'll never forget. He looked at me and smiled and he said, Tony, it's what you teach. And I said, well, I teach a lot of things. Which thing? And he goes, gratitude.
So
he goes, you and I, how many billionaires do you and I know that are miserable human beings and they're so unhappy? He said, they're poor. And if you've got $1 billion, but you're frustrated and angry and sad all the time, your life is frustrated, angry, and sad. How many people don't have nothing, but they're grateful for their family or for their health, and they're there? So that is the game. Most people who start a business very often will start 2 and 3, 4 more. And the reason they do it is because the first one isn't succeeding or they no longer
lack patience.
For it. Exactly right. And so what happens to that person is they're never going to be successful in most cases, unless they get lucky. You can get lucky, you can bounce across something that's easier to do. But most people are always looking for that next level. What my view is it's great to test all these things, but you got to find what is your flagship. What is it that you're going to commit your soul to? Because if you don't do that, the inevitable challenges are going to come up and you're going to then move on to something else
100%.
that's more enjoyable. And so the other thing to look at is business is about constantly, not only adding such massive value, doing more for others than anybody else, but it's also simultaneously about your own psychology. It's your ability to go through thresholds of control. It's like, I can remember when I didn't have $50,000 to keep the doors open on my company. I had 12 employees and 11 wanted to quit because they hated the person running the show. And $50,000 would be like 500 million to me today. And I figured out how to get through that threshold. And once I did, like all the problems related to that were handled. I know you've done this as well. And then I had a $5 million lawsuit that was totally unfair and unjust. And I finally had just the amount of time, energy, and money I had to bite the bullet and do it. And $5 million was more than I could ever met. Then I had a partner who took a company that was losing $1 million a day and turned it into 1.5 billion in positive EBITDA. I'm not mentioning names, Amway. And he wanted me to join him in business with some other partners, not doing the multi-level side. Did the business, put in 10 million bucks. We all put in 10 million, 40 million in debt. But I signed joint and several, which I didn't understand in those days what that meant. And 2 of my partners were supposedly billionaires and they went broke. We bought some more companies. I ended up with $120 million in debt that I was on the hook for. No one else had any money. And I'm getting up to do a seminar wanting to throw up. It was a new threshold of control. So you know when you ski or you snowboard and you think you're just new at it and you think you're going down a blue or green and it turns out to be a double black. And you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And so you have 2 choices. One is you start to go down and you freak out and you're gonna die, you slam on the ground, try to hang on for dear life, or the other is, baby, you focus on where you wanna go and you find a way to curve, you find a way to cut. And once you do it a couple of times,
you get used to it.
You have no more fear of that element. Now my biggest one out of that led me to $1 billion. I have 31 companies now, to give you an idea, 7 different industries, as diverse as like stem cells to virtual reality. We have the exclusive for the NBA now in virtual reality, to give an example. And I got 1,200 employees. We're on 3 continents, and we got $5 billion in sales. But I did that because I first stayed on one frickin' thing, and so I got so masterful at it. You need 3 beliefs to be successful in your business at the highest level. You have to believe, number 1, what did this guy have to believe to go 31 years? He had to believe, number 1, that the treasure was out there. Number 2, he had to believe, I'm gonna find it. And number 3, he had to believe it's gonna be worth it.
Yeah.
If you don't believe there's that treasure in your business, you'll never find it. And you gotta use those 3 things to go to another level. Most people massively overestimate what they're gonna do in a year, and they underestimate what they can do in a decade. So what happens is they get all disappointed and frustrated, and they don't stay with the game. A lot of people have tremendous enthusiasm and passion and desire to do things, but they're missing the right strategy. Right. And so you could be in a position where perhaps you've worked hard at something for years and you're disappointed by the result, and it's just because you have the wrong strategy. Yeah. If you understand the right strategy, you can compress decades into days, and that's what I became famous for. And the way I did it was not my intelligence. I basically said, if anyone is really successful at something, if they've lost weight and truly kept it off for a decade or more, not a few weeks or a few months, they're doing something different than the rest of us. And what are they doing? If there's a couple and they've been together for 10 or 15 or 20 years and they're not just happy, they're in love, they're passionate, they're intimate, we all want to say they're lucky, but what I found over literally 39 years of studying this is they're doing things differently than other people. We all want to think it's luck when really it's often just some things we don't realize, and they're often little triggers that change everything. So my focus has been, how do you help somebody increase their energy? Because without energy, you're not going to have a great relationship. You can love each other, but you're so exhausted, there's no intimacy, right? You know, if you want to start a business or if you want to change your career, it takes energy. So I start with the body. Then we go to emotions and relationships, because if you got everything going for you, but you're angry or you're frustrated or you're sad or you're bored or you're feeling lonely, what good is it? And what I've spent my life doing is showing how to people to change. So I became famous initially by taking on people who had been in therapy for years, decades, and wiping out their problem. I launched my career kind of intensely, because I'm an intense character, and I went on national radio in Canada and then the US and said, I don't care what your problem is, I don't care if you've had it for years, I don't care if you've been in therapy for a decade, I'll handle it in 1 hour. I am the one-stop therapist. And I was sincere because I've been doing it, but a lot of people thought, they were skeptical, as they should be. And a psychiatrist called up and made my entire career. He said I was a liar and a charlatan, that it was impossible to, because I said I can eliminate a phobia in an hour or less. He said it takes, 5, 6, 7 years, sometimes it never ends. And I said, sir, have you ever met me? He said, no. I said, have you ever worked with any of my clients? He said, no. I said, you're calling me a liar and a charlatan, and you've never met me, you've never met my clients. And I said, are you a scientist? And he said, of course I am, I'm a physician. I said, then you must be stating your hypothesis. And this is what launched my whole career. I said, your hypothesis says I'm a liar and a charlatan, so I'm doing a free guest event tomorrow night at the Holiday Inn here. It was in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And I said, anyone listening can come. I suggest you come and prove I'm a charlatan. Bring me one of your worst patients. Bring me somebody you've never been able to cure. I said, I'm sure you have plenty of those, because he's being mean. So I was a little bit playful with him. And he says, well, we all have patients that aren't ready to change yet. I said, I haven't found any. Now, at that time, I'd probably done 10 therapies, right? But I knew what was possible. So long story short, he said, well, I do have this one woman try anything, and she had a snake phobia. Phobia is uncontrollable fear. What stops us all is fear. That's uncontrollable fear. And he brought her. I worked with her on stage for about 18, 19, 20 minutes. And at the end, I wrapped a snake around her, and I'd found my career, because I'd found a way to prove to people this works. So then as time went by, I dealt with people with every kind of challenge you can imagine, smoking, drinking, etc. I dealt with people that, had not had sexual joy in a lot of period of time. And I helped a woman have this experience without touching her, which became very popular, because it was just changing what's going on in our head and our hearts. And so my life is about that, and it's about strategies. So strategies for time management, because we all have more than we can do. Strategies for relationships, strategies for your joy, strategies for what's going to transform you in career or your business. My whole philosophy is really simple. I'm committed to helping people, those you watching, to have life on your terms. It's not about me, it's not about my way of living, because we're all different. What really gives people an extraordinary life is different. Some people, it's 3 beautiful children. For someone else, it's a beautiful garden. Some people, it's writing poetry. For some people, it's building a great business. For some people, it's getting totally fit. Some people, it's all the above. And whatever it is, I'm committed to it. And it takes 2 skills that this whole program is about. All of this is really about saying, how do you be able to master the science of achievement? How do you go from where you are to where you want to be? How do you take dreams and make them reality? And I've not just done it myself, I've helped millions of people to do it, because we all have the capability. We just need the strategies that save us time. And all the strategies I teach, I've learned from people that are producing results for decades, not once in a while, not one-hit wonders. And the second area, though, that I think is even more important, that we don't value enough culturally, we're all driven to achieve or taught to. But if you're sitting home right now, the most important question is, are you really, truly happy? Are you out of your mind with excitement? Do you feel aliveness and passion in your life? And achieving doesn't guarantee happiness. I've talked to a lot of people over the last year, and I've said I've been in China, I've been in Japan, and Australia, and Peru, all over the place, South America, here in America. And I say to people, I got rooms of 8,000 or 10,000 people in my seminars, and I'll say, how many of you, I said, we lost about 2 years ago an American treasure, and that was Robin Williams. And I say, how many of you loved Robin Williams? And I even ask you at home, and when I'm in a seminar, I say, raise your hand only if you loved him, not if you liked him, even though you didn't know him. And 98, 99% of the people raise their hand, and I say, was this guy masterful at achieving? He came and made his first TV show. He made the #1 show was his goal. He did it. He wanted to make more money than he could spend. He did it. He wanted the most beautiful family. He did it. He wanted to make movies. He did it. He wanted to win an Academy Award for not being funny, and he did it. And he killed himself. He hung himself, leaving his family behind, because he suffered inside, because achievement is not enough. I tell people success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. Most of us in life have a set of rules that guide us, a set of belief systems. If you believe you should be on time and people show up late, you get a little crazy. The only problem is if you're married to somebody that's always late, right? Or you think being late is being on time and they think being on time is being 20 minutes early, right? So we all have rules, and if we're unaware of them, they create conflicts within ourselves, like we judge ourselves or harsh to ourselves. They create conflicts with other human beings. What I try to focus on in much of what affects our life are invisible forces. Sounds kind of corny, but radiation is one of the most powerful forces invisible. Gravity, love and hate are some of the most powerful forces. And what I try to do is show you what are the forces that are controlling your mind and your heart, which is these rules. And most of the rules we picked up often because we were conditioned to be that way, or we reacted and maybe threw our pendulum to be different, but that much different doesn't really make us happy. So what Power Talk does is give you a set of tools and insights and things you can change within yourself that will instantly change a relationship, as an example. That's what that focuses on. And then the most successful program in history in the personal achievement area is called, to give you an idea, Personal Power. And that program I designed, and more people have used it to get results than anything of its nature in the world in the history of personal development. So I'm pretty happy. We've had 50 million people get this and be thrilled with it. So that program is designed so that you just do one of these audios each day. You listen to an audio, you ask a few questions, and you take one little action. Because most people get overwhelmed trying to do so much. And if you see all these boxes and things that add value, you go, oh my God, where do I start? It's just one a day, and it's something that you're going to do over the next 18 days. You can do it driving in your car. I call it net time. No extra time. You can drive your car so you're not having to waste time doing it. You can do it while you're working out, while you're cleaning, while you're going on a walk, or whatever the case may be. And you're feeding your mind, because all of us, most of us, and I'm wondering if you do, most of us know how great our life is in one area. We usually leave an area out. Like if your career is going great, oftentimes you don't take care of yourself physically as much. If you're taking care of yourself physically, oftentimes you feel like you don't have enough time to, for your intimate relationship. Or if that's great, you don't have enough time for your kids. If that's great, economics often are off. It's the nature of human beings to focus on the areas we're good at, and the areas we're not so good at, we kind of try to ignore, and they hurt our relationship. They hurt the other areas of life. They hurt our kids. So I hope that you will give yourself a simple opportunity. One of the people I've coached is a man named Paul Tudor Jones. I've coached him now for, 22 years. And he's one of the top 10 financial traders in the history of the world. He hasn't lost money in 22 years. Wow. There's no one in his category that can say that. So I work with Pitbull. I work with heads of, Salesforce.com. Mark Benioff built the company from 0 in 15 years to 8 billion. And he'll tell you it started with his conversations with me. So whatever it is you want to change, there are people that have done it already. And what you really need to do is just get yourself exposed. Just make the phone call. It's sometimes weird to pick up the phone, especially you're used to jewelry and other things like that. What the hell is this guy doing here, right? But I'm really telling you that the jewelry is designed to make you feel better, right? The makeup's designed to make you feel better. But what will make you feel better permanently on top of that is if you make the shifts inside and you make the shifts outside in your life. If you look at life, most people major in minor things. Yes. They know more about Lindsay Lohan or someone else and what's going on in their life than they know their own life, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that the highest priority is to focus on what matters most. People often say to me, oh my gosh, it took me 10 years to change this, my business, my relationship, the way I feel, wherever it is, smoking. And I'm respectful, but I say it's just not true. It didn't take you 10 years. It took you 10 years to get to the moment where you finally made the change and made it happen. And what I'm good at is compressing that 10 years into now, because I've spent the years figuring out what makes people actually get triggered, what makes them follow through, what makes them produce those results. And the reason I'm here 39 years later, think about it. We have media all over the world that will love to tear everything apart. I'm standing here 39 years before you with all these people that have endorsed and support what I've done, millions of people all over the earth in 100 countries, because it works. But you got to remember, it doesn't take forever. What it takes is you to make one decision, to say, make the phone call right now. I want to get myself a coach. I'm going to listen to one little audio a day. I'm going to take one little action that'll take me maybe 10, 15 minutes, and it's going to build momentum so that pretty soon what seemed really huge and difficult is really easy. When you try to do it all at once, it's overwhelming for most people, and that's why most people fail.
It's true.
And you brought something else up, which is lasting change. You hear the first gentleman, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, said...
Alan,
right.
Yes.
What was it? How many years did he say?
14.
14 years. This young lady just came, it was 3 years later, and they're still seeing this impact in their life. When you change what's really controlling what you think and feel and behave, those changes last. Think about this. Everything, losing weight requires a change here and here, right? In your emotions and in your head. Being able to have a great relationship, change here and here. Everything you want is making these two changes, and there's nothing wrong with this. We just have patterns that get in our way. And it's really hard to change yourself, but it's easy to change a pattern. And at this point, I could be an idiot after 39 years traveling around the world with 50 million people. I've seen everything you can imagine. I've gotten phone calls, Serena Williams, middle of the night, what do I do? President Clinton calls me up and said, they're going to impeach me in the morning. What should I do? Literally. And I'm like, could you call me sooner? So I've been put on the line for 39 years. So I could be pretty dumb at this point, and I'd still see there's patterns that make you angry, sad, lonely. There are patterns that make you passionate, alive, excited, and successful. And what I'm showing you here is how to just listen to one little audio a day, take one little action so it's easy during net time again, while you're driving, while you're cleaning, while you're going for exercise, whatever. And you're gonna feed your mind, and you'll feel a difference immediately, but after 7 days, 10 days, 14 days, 18 days, you're gonna see a changed life. But I really believe in my heart and my soul that if you're not happy in your relationship, you're not happy. And that affects everything, even if your career's going great. So I'm so thrilled. I love my wife, and I'm not saying this on the air, I say this off the air, and she's been around me. I've been married with her for 15 years together, 17 years. I think she's probably watching right now. Honey, I love her more than anything on the face of the earth. I love her more than ever before, but that's only because she has made more of a difference in my life than anything else that I've learned or grown, and I know that. And how many people do you know that maybe you at home have done this? Have you ever had this goal you worked really hard for, and then you achieved it? You got the job, you got the relationship, you got whatever that really mattered to you, and then your brain went, is this all there is? That's worse than failing, isn't it? Because when you fail, if you're a persistent person, you don't give up, you'll still find a way. But when you succeed and you're not happy, that's the ultimate pain. And so this is really about achieving, but also being fulfilled. As I said earlier, if you're not fulfilled, if you don't feel joy and happiness in your life, how are you gonna be a great parent? How are you gonna try and help somebody that's a friend of yours when inside you're a mess? It's like people often go to somebody who's broke to give them financial advice. They never check how they're doing. Or they go to somebody who's not in a great relationship and say, what should I do? And they go, get out of it, they're all terrible. You need a different set of role models that have done it and made it successful. When we do things outside of ourselves, they make us feel different for the moment. That's a beautiful thing. But when you change what's going on inside, then everything else shines at a different level. And I just think that what you got to understand is that this is an opportunity for you to take just a few minutes each day for you, not anyone else. Because, you get on an airplane, the first thing they say is if we have a problem and the air masks come down, put it on your children. No, they say put it on yourself, which sounds kind of selfish, but if you don't take care of yourself, how are you gonna help your husband or your wife? How are you gonna help your children? How are you gonna help the people in your community, your mother, your father, anybody else? And so my greatest excitement for you is not only the change you'll create in yourself, but as you heard, for example, the gentleman just a few minutes ago talking about what he's done with his wife and what he's done with his son, this is your opportunity to do that. And you know what? It all comes down to the end to knowing the right tools, because you can have the best intent. You can be a positive thinker all you want. I always tell people, if your goal was to see a sunset and you start running east, I don't care how positive you are. I don't care what you believe. You need the right tool, the right strategy. We all have an emotional home. We have an address we go back to, and you might see people who every 2 or 3 years, their home gets destroyed by water or cyclones, and you say, why do they still live there? Because they're so used to it, it's like it's gonna happen again. We have emotional homes. You could be successful in every level, but if you are feeling frustrated or sad or lonely or overwhelmed or like, what am I gonna do with my life in the future? Then you are gonna come back to that emotion again and again and again just out of habit. I'd like to break that pattern for you, and I'd like to show you what to succeed with. And I also want you to know the most successful people in the world in business and finance and entertainment all utilize this. You don't need a problem to do this. This is about taking your life to the next level.